Welcome back to the channel. This will be my transfer plans for Double Gameweek 25 before the Carabao Cup semi-finals take place, and we'll know which teams double and also blanking Gameweek 29. All of that is covered in my transfers video, which I uploaded yesterday, and across all of my recent live streams. In fact, the last three, the deadline, reaction, and assistant manager streams, all cover the permutations of the Carabao Cup semi-finals and what that means for Double Gameweek 25. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, I promise to get this to 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. If you want to see a chip strategy video where I break down all the chips and the best time to use them and all the potential blanks and doubles later in the season, then like this video and let me know down in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. We've still got one game left in Double Gameweek 24, the Merseyside derby, to conclude a very long Double Gameweek 24, and there is obviously a few weeks until the next deadline. But Matt Sells actually got a clean sheet for once. I've had him for the last 3 game weeks and he's been very disappointing, conceding 7 goals in the first 2 matches, but a 7-0 win there for Nottingham Forest to make up for last week's drubbing against Bournemouth, where they lost 5-0. But a bit fortuitous with this one, I have to say, because Sells was very lucky, I think, with Danny Welbeck hitting the crossbar and the ball almost went over the line, but not quite enough for it to be deemed as a goal. So in the end, Forest kept that clean sheet and it was just their day. Everything went the way they wanted to, and Brighton were thoroughly decimated. Their tactical setup was completely disastrous, and Forest fully capitalised and made up for the goal difference they lost out on against Bournemouth last week. My defensive line was also quite solid, with Trent Alexander-Arnold as my vice-captain, getting a clean sheet against Bournemouth. A bit fortuitous with this one as well. I think Bournemouth should have scored. Justin Kluivert missed an open goal. Semenyo hit the crossbar, and I think Bournemouth deserved a goal at the very least, perhaps even a draw. But Liverpool were clinical, and ultimately they are the best team in the league for a reason. It wasn't their best performance, but still enough to get the job done. And Mikalenko, one of my new signings, also kept a clean sheet in a 4-0 victory for Everton over Leicester City. But the disappointment, of course, is Levi Colwill. My alternatives were actually Veltman, who got -1 points. Thank God I didn't start him, or he's coming off my bench. And the other one was Robinson, who got an assist and also got booked against Newcastle away from home. So I would have gained a few points by going for Robinson, but ultimately neither kept a clean sheet, and Robinson didn't get bonus points despite getting an assist. So I went for Levi Colwill and hoped for a Chelsea clean sheet, but he was the one who made the mistake, which gave Jarrod Bowen the opportunity to give West Ham the lead. But Chelsea made the comeback in the end, so they got the victory. But Levi Colwill is simply not good enough. There's a reason why he's the only FPL player overnight to have gone down in price, and ultimately I can't wait to get rid of him. As for my midfield, it was pretty decent. Salah as my captain also did very well, and those that triple captain him will be very happy so far and argue that it's a much stronger play than the assistant manager chip on Arne Slot or David Moyes. Cole Palmer got an assist and also 2 bonus points, but also got booked. Otherwise, we could have been looking at an even higher ceiling, perhaps an additional bonus point to get maximum, and also, of course, no -1 for getting a yellow card. Anthony Gordon blanked and also got booked. A lot of yellow cards in my 50-man squad this week, and Brian Mbeumo blanked against Tottenham Hotspur. Brentford were very disappointing. Visser missed an open goal, but you can forgive Mbeumo. I think he's been incredible all season, and he has blanked now a few times in home matches, but more often than not, he will return at the GTEC Community Stadium. The highlight of my week, though, was up front with Chris Wood. I almost sold him to Ndai, but instead I sold Cody Gakpo, and even with that transfer, I was a bit uneasy about it, but it was Chris Wood scoring a hat-trick, and once Forest scored the first 2 goals, I was thinking, is this not going to be Chris Wood's day, where Forest end up kind of setting up shop, winning 2 or 3-0, and Chris Wood ends up blanking somehow? But he proved a lot of us doubters wrong. He got a hat-trick in the end, and he's been by far my best pick this season. As I mentioned multiple times, I started this campaign in Game Week 1 with Chris Wood, and I can't think of a better pick to start this season. He's got 17 goals now to his tally, his best ever goal-scoring run in the Premier League, and at 33 years of age, he just gets better and better. His record under Nuno Espirito Santo since he joined in December of 2023 has simply been ridiculous. Now, Isak blanked and was very close to scoring against Fulham, but you can forgive him. He's been incredible for a few months now. And Ndai scored towards the end of the game, and I was thinking, why didn't I just go for better or maybe go in a different direction? And ultimately, I did recommend a lot of people go for Visser, and I think long-term he's still better than Ndai, but it was very, very reassuring and a bit of a relief for him to score towards the end because Everton were 3-0 up already, but Ndiaye had a few opportunities. He was shooting from distance. He was very eager to get that goal, and through tenacity, winning the ball back in a very advanced position, he was able to make something work and score that 4th goal, which meant 2 bonus points as well to deliver 8 overall. But I also activated the assistant manager chip on Arne Slot. He got 10 points, and there's 1 game left, of course, for Double Gameweek 24, and that will be crucial to determine whether those that went for David Moyes end up getting that really high ceiling. If Everton get a draw or a win, that will be a massive win for those that went there for the Scotsman. But I think with Arne Slot, potentially back-to-back doubles, and we'll find out on Thursday if they beat Tottenham Hotspur and advance to the Carabao Cup final. They will face Aston Villa away in Double Gameweek 25 on top of Wolves at home. So that's back-to-back doubles, and it makes the assistant manager chip so powerful, especially with Arne Slot, where you save a transfer in the process. That's why I sold Cody Gakpo and kept Chris Wood in the end, and thankfully it has turned out pretty well so far, but David Moyes isn't doing too shabby either. As for my bench, it was pretty decent. I mean, it's kind of a relief to see not many bench points on there. Valdimarson played in the absence of Flecken, and we'll see if he returns for Double Gameweek 25. Semenyo blanked, and I will be starting him very soon. Let's see if he can finally return whilst in my starting 11. Robinson got that assist and the booking against Newcastle, and Veltman got -1 point. So in the end, it's not too shabby. Maybe a little mishap by not starting Robinson, but nothing too serious. I've definitely had much worse in terms of my bench this season. But if we also look at my rank and stuff like that, it's looking very promising so far. 100 points with the -4 hit taken into account. That's 96 for the game week, and my rank has gone up quite significantly to around 420,000, and I've only got 1 free transfer available for Double Gameweek 25, and I'm still open to taking a -4 hit, but using a free transfer is probably more likely at this moment in time. As I mentioned earlier, Levi Colwill was the only player in FPL to have gone down in price overnight, and don't expect too much in terms of price activity until next week because there's such a long wait until the next deadline. So these are my initial plans, of course, for Double Gameweek 25 with my transfer plans, and next week, keep your eyes peeled for the team selection video as well. But no matter what you do, I'd urge you not to sell any Arsenal, Chelsea, Fulham, Tottenham Hotspur, Liverpool or Aston Villa players because they could all double in Game Week 25. So I think it's probably best to keep them. And once we know who's going to reach the final and the teams that blank in Game Week 29 and have that brought forward to form Double Game Week 25, then we can make informed opinions on our transfer plans and all of that jazz. But let's actually talk about my provisional ideas and I'll adapt to different situations. So if Aston Villa and Liverpool double in Game Week 25, I'd be very keen to sell Anthony Gordon to Morgan Rogers, who has blanked 3 times in a row in FPL with 1 pointers actually on each occasion. Rogers has been very frustrating for those that own him, but he scored a hat-trick in UCL Fantasy against Celtic, and he's been a very good player this season for the Villains. And whilst he was in my team, he was fairly decent actually and did the job when needed. So I'm very keen to buy Morgan Rogers for Anthony Gordon if Aston Villa double next week. Otherwise, if I were to sell Anthony Gordon in the next few weeks, it would be for a Bournemouth midfielder potentially, although Semenyo is already in my ranks, but Justin Kluivert for me is still the best Cherries midfielder at this moment in time. Now, other transfers would actually involve other areas. Alexander Isak to Ollie Watkins is less likely, I'll be honest right now, and Watkins is yellow flagged at the moment, but he should be available for Double Gameweek 25. His injury shouldn't be too serious, and Unai Emery hopes for the best there. We don't know too much about this injury right now, but Watkins has a great injury record. In fact, he rarely misses games due to issues, and I think he will be available. And if he has that double against Ipswich Town and Liverpool, I think having Isak and then adding Watkins to your ranks would be ideal, and perhaps Anthony Gordon to Morgan Rogers will help you get the funds available to have both Isak and Watkins in your 50-man squad. But the other transfers would also be in different areas of the pitch. So Anthony Gordon to Kulusevski is another possibility. This would be in the case of Tottenham Hotspur and Fulham doubling in Game Week 25, and that depends on Tottenham Hotspur reaching the Carabao Cup final. They've got a 1-0 lead, but they're going to Anfield, and it's going to be very difficult for them to hold on. But Kulusevski is the only Tottenham Hotspur player I'm really looking at. If Dominic Solanke was available, then he would be the standout by far. Defensively, I'm not intrigued at all, despite a resolute performance against Brentford and a 2-0 victory, but I also think they're a bit lucky to not concede there, with Vissa missing a big chance and also a few other missed opportunities there for Brentford. But look, Spurs, they can go on a run. If you look at Ange Postecoglou for the assistant manager in Double Gameweek 25, that could have a very high ceiling if Spurs double next week. But I have to say that's a very big if at this moment in time. But Anthony Gordon will likely be sold, and I only bought him a couple of weeks ago. I was very late to this party. That was a mistake of mine and not the first I've made this season. I'm also looking at Ndai to Raul Jimenez if Tottenham Hotspur and Fulham double in Gameweek 25. I've got Robinson in my setup already, and I don't really see a need to go to any other Fulham player. But the worry here would be, would Raul Jimenez start one game and Muniz starts the other? And it seems to be a common theme where Jimenez scores in a match and then Muniz comes on and he also scores, and it makes things a bit uncertain for the long term. And Ndai did very well for me, and that's 3 game weeks in a row where he has produced a return, and he could do fairly well against Crystal Palace away and Man United at home. So this transfer is also very unlikely. If you're looking at kind of the most probable ones, it's going to be Gordon out for Morgan Rogers at this moment in time. And the last one I'm also discussing is Veltman to Gabriel, and I would be able to do this transfer if I also buy Morgan Rogers for Anthony Gordon. And this would also be if Arsenal reach the Carabao Cup final. They're 2-0 down, going to St James's Park. It's going to be very tricky for them, but when you've got a 2-0 lead in a cup game, like in the Champions League back in the day, and to be fair, even nowadays with the 2 legs and also the Carabao Cup semi-finals, the team that's leading 2-0 might have a few conflicting ideas about what should we do to preserve this lead. Do we go for it or do we sit back? And any uncertainty can lead to an opportunity for the opposition team. And in this case, Arsenal can still do the business, and Newcastle have lost in back-to-back home games in the Premier League. But it's still going to be very tough. And this is the most unlikely scenario that if Arsenal reach that Carabao Cup final, Gabriel would be my priority transfer for Double Gameweek 25. But with all of that in mind, this is how my team would line up for the following game week. And of course, once those Carabao Cup semi-finals take place, I'll be locking in my team and talking about this in my team selection. Sells in goal against Fulham away isn't ideal, but I don't think it's worth going to Emi Martinez in goal, even if Aston Villa double in Double Gameweek 25. And in terms of Liverpool, I've already got my triple up with Arne Slot and the 2 other players, and we'll wait and see, of course, what happens with Trent Alexander-Arnold. But it looks like he's going to be out for days and not months, and of course not weeks as well. I think he'll be unavailable against Tottenham Hotspur in the Carabao Cup semi-final, and he will be available for the Merseyside derby and subsequently a potential double against Wolves at home and Aston Villa away. Robinson is kind of poised to start here despite facing Nottingham Forest at home, and I've got a lot of players from this matchup, and Mikalenko away to Crystal Palace is also a possible starter over the likes of Veltman and Levi Colwill. If you have seen my previous team selection videos or transfer plans and stuff like that, you'll probably have a good idea of how much of a struggle it has been for me to build a solid defensive line. I've made so many transfers in this position, and a few weeks ago, of course, I sold Gabriel to Trent. That was my only route to buy Alexander-Arnold, and ideally, I would have had both of them, but a few other transfers in other positions has also left me short of funds, so I have made a few mistakes as well along the way. But I think with the acquisition of Gabriel fairly soon, I could lock out my defensive line for quite a while and focus my transfers on the midfield and forward line, which is most important. But I'm also very happy with my provisional midfield, which could include Salah with a double of Wolves at home and Aston Villa away, Palmer facing a team that he absolutely battered early in the season and he got over 20 FPL points, Brian Mbeumo facing a resurgent West Ham side potentially, Morgan Rogers, who I think will double in Gameweek 25 with 2 home games as well, and Antoine Semenyo facing Southampton away. I actually got Semenyo on the Gameweek 6 wildcard, and the fixture he had then was Southampton at home. He scored in that game, but ever since, he basically blanks when he's in my team, and he does really well on my bench, and it seems like he performs against the better teams in the country, and when you least expect him to. But I do like that midfield 5, to be fair, and that of course includes buying Rogers for Anthony Gordon. But let's say that Aston Villa don't double and I decide to just keep Anthony Gordon. I don't think that's too shabby facing Man City away, who just shipped in 5 goals to Arsenal. And my front line is also looking very solid, with Isak and Chris Wood being the provisional starters right now, with decent fixtures on paper. But I've got a few clashes here, as you can see. I've got Chris Wood and Sells up against Robinson. I don't think having Sells and Robinson is too bad, but having a striker competing with your defender is always going to be far from ideal. But who's to say Robinson gets an assist? That's 10 for the season so far, and Chris Wood scores in the same game. That is possible, but of course quite unlikely in the grand scheme of things. But my bench is also looking very solid, and I've got Arne Slot in there to really bolster my team for Double Gameweek 25. And of course, I activated it last week. That was the first time you could do so, and the assistant manager will be active until Gameweek 26. That will be the last Gameweek where I've got Arne Slot in, but I might consider a switch to Mikel Arteta or another manager for Gameweek 26. And you might be asking, what if Liverpool don't reach the Carabao Cup final? What are your plans? Well, in that case, I would go for Marco Silva or Ange Postecoglou, and I think the most likely would actually be Ange Postecoglou at this moment in time. But I'm not discounting Marco Silva. There are potential table bonus against Nottingham Forest, but it's not an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. And I've also got the likes of Ali Marson, who could start once again, and I've also got Ndai, Colwill and Veltman. There is a possibility of benching Ndai going wrong, but then again, who do I bench from these players? If I also keep Anthony Gordon and don't go for Morgan Rogers, do I start Gordon or Ndai? I think I'd still favour Anthony Gordon, but Ndai has been in great form, and so have Everton, who have turned things around under David Moyes. He has done a brilliant job here. Of course, it is familiar settings for him, and he's gotten the absolute best out of his players in the last couple of game weeks. But with the captaincy, there is no doubt in my mind, like there would be with my bench, for example. Mohamed Salah will be my captain. Even if it's just Wolves at home, I'd favour him over, let's say, Raul Jimenez having 2 home games against Nottingham Forest and Tottenham Hotspur. And of course, if Liverpool don't reach the final, neither would Aston Villa, and that means Morgan Rogers would not be my transfer in, and that's why the team selection next week could be crucial to provide updates just in case things go a bit differently to expected in the Carabao Cup semi-finals. But I think Salah, even with a single game week, would be favoured over most double game week options in 25. But I'm backing Liverpool to reach that Carabao Cup final and to double against Wolves at home and Aston Villa away. Let's also look at predicted points. According to Fantasy Football Hub, they've also got an algorithm for the manager points, and Arne Slot is actually the highest for Game Week 25, especially if they double, of course, and it's pretty decent on the whole if you look at my starting 11, but Mohamed Salah is top, as he pretty much always is, and Trent is my current vice-captain. As I said before, I am expecting him to be available for Double Game Week 25. I've been very consistent on that, and the latest updates by Paul Joyce and The Times have really reinforced that belief, so I'm very confident that I don't need to sell Trent anytime soon. But maybe going into Game Week 26, especially if I still don't have Gabriel by that stage, I could make that sort of transfer and then spread the funds to bolster my defensive line and finally sell the likes of Colwill and Veltman from my 15-man squad. So that's how things look at the moment with my provisional plans for Game Week 25. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which transfers are you looking to make? And do you think Liverpool and Aston Villa will double in 25? Or do you think it'll be Fulham and Tottenham Hotspur? And let's not forget Arsenal and Chelsea. If that were the case, then maybe Levi Colwill can finally be useful for once. And with that double game week, maybe a clean sheet or something, at least 4 points by Levi Colwill would be pretty decent, but he will still be sold in the not so distant future. One of the best websites you can use in FPL is fpl.team, where you can visualize future game weeks and compare different transfer plans. And going into Game Week 26, assuming I buy Morgan Rogers this week with Liverpool and Aston Villa doubling in 25, my team will look like this, with Sells in goal, having a fairly difficult fixture against Newcastle away, a back three of Trent against Man City away, Mikalenko hosting Man United, and that could be Veltman, to be fair, against Southampton away. That would be another possibility, but ultimately Brighton have been terrible defensively in the last couple of months, and Robinson at home to Crystal Palace. The midfield would comprise of Salah, Mbeumo, Palmer, Rogers and Semenyo, all with fairly decent fixtures, and of course Rogers and Palmer would face each other and they could haul in the same game and do their ice-cold celebration. And the front line would have Chris Wood, who scored a hat-trick at St James's Park last time out, and Alexander Isak, so 2 other players facing each other with Sells in goal, causing another clash in my 15-man squad. The bench would have Valdimarsson, Ndai, Veltman and Levi Colwill. You might even argue if Flecken is still out, Valdimarsson against Leicester isn't too shabby. That's something I could also consider. And Veltman on paper would be better than Mikalenko, but fpl.team doesn't really think there's a massive difference. In fact, they favour Mikalenko because of how poor Brighton have been recently. And in terms of the assistant manager chip, this will be the last game week where it's active. And of course, you can't use any other chips in that free game week time frame where the chip is also available and in use. But Arne Slot out to either Guardiola for the table bonus because Liverpool are facing Man City on that particular occasion. That could be the case if Man City are 6th or below in the Premier League table by that stage. And let's not forget they face Newcastle at home in Game Week 25. That's definitely very intriguing to me. But if there's no table bonus on offer, I think the most safe and secure option is going for Mikel Arteta when Arsenal host West Ham at home. So that's something I'm also thinking about. But ideally, Liverpool double in Game Week 25, so I can keep Arne's slot for then and possibly sell him in Game Week 26 instead and only use one free transfer for both Game Week 25 and Game Week 26. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below with your system manager plans and all of that jazz. If you want to see a chip strategy guide, then also let me know down in the comment section below. And thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. I promise to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 35 subscribers. Follow me on X and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the Championships for early access to my videos, amongst my other perks. The Discord server, FPL League, Spotify, and Blue Sky can also be found in the description. I wish you all the best of luck for Double Gameweek 24, 25, and the rest of the season. And I'll see you very soon for more FPL and useful fantasy content.